Okay, this is a think tank. We do the deep diving to prepare for the Monday session at growthod.org. If you're interested in a think tank, we meet on Tuesdays. We go deep for the next seven sessions on Heidegger and being in time in particular. There's particular things we did last week for going to the beneath to drop your Superman cape story and buy into a deep dive of listening to other people. Now we're going to do the before today. And so let me find the right file. Um, let's see. I'm hoping it's this one. Yay. It is. Okay. So just to give you some overview, um, I'm going to drop down because I don't want you to see that part yet. So one of the things that I've done in the past to get across the idea of multiple histories is to just do a timeline with some photos of my life from birth to death, or from tricycle to death, actually. Yeah, that's me in the lower left. So what I've done is tried to show that nobody's lifeline goes like this unless they're already dead. And it doesn't have a beginning, middle, end. And there's all kinds of turning points, tipping points, whatever you want to call them, in going through it. Particularly pulled out today the turning points of going to Vietnam, being drafted, going to Vietnam, catching Agent Orange, years and years later, stage four cancer, and it's my pain to paradise story, Olivia, you know. And I came to recognize that I'm grateful for Vietnam experience in certain ways. I'm grateful for the cancer I got from Agent Orange in certain ways. I'm grateful for getting into a special clinical trial that got me through the cancer, and I'm grateful for you all. So it's a matter of reframing it, but it's also that I could pick out a whole bunch of stories there, divorce, remarriage, that I have a whole plethora of stories, and all the people I'm in relationship have a plethora of like mini stories. Does that make sense? And to pick out any one of them is kind of a fool's journey, or it's an abuse. I'll come back to this later. So I've been playing with how this would work. So there's this guide at enThink.com, and it has the link to the Heidegger book, which you can then search through to find different things. My Heidegger book's already loaded, but you can do that. It shows what we did in November, um, what we're doing today. I took out the last week. So there's like two things people were preparing for today. A couple of pages, 190 to 192, for example, footnote 2, 191. We sort of went over that a lot last week, but the insight is the VOR words are particularly connected around the one we're doing this way, which is um, Vorhab, the Vorhab, what I call the Vorhab, and it's also called that in the index of the book at the end, um, the index for German. So the Vorhab really kind of is informative to the beneath, right? The foreconception. It's informative to forestructuring. It's informative to the foregriff. The other, not all the fours. There's like probably 25 of them in there in the book, but these ones in particular that I call foreconception, fore-having, foreseeing, forestructuring, those four are all driven by and driven to being. So it's everything is Dasein, and these are particular ways in which humans can attempt to get at it. So that's all I'm going to say about that part. Now, what the big deal today is for me is to give you a little overview of the other words that I want to tie in today. Historicity, historicality, and I'm not even going to try that one. And then there's some other words that I'm going to pull out for you. I'm going to do it in the following kind of way, just as a start. So the before, we got Fore-having meets the authentic historicizing. So that's the way I'm framing it for our session. I won't be talking like this on Monday, just so you know, it won't happen. But so I blew this up and put it in highlight. The fact of existing Dasein that is spending its time, it takes time into its reckoning from day to day and regulates this reckoning astronomically and calendarically. I think it means like calendar and stars, but only if both Dasein's everyday historicity. Only if both Daseins. I didn't even know there was two, but this is from um, page 143, section 372. For those of you who are new to studying being in time, there are section numbers along the page margin, either left or right. Those refer to a whole section of paragraphs that could run from 2 pages to 10 pages in a book. In the section number, there are pages. So I'm in page 423 of the book in section 372, which runs longer if you want context. And then there are other things like footnote 2. And reckoning with time, let's see, and I highlighted this, embracing enough to enable us to make a problem of the ontological meaning of everydayness. The reason I like this is because it connects back to the theme of the conference, which is the Oscar Wilde play, right, on Our Town, which is all about everydayness and tuning into the everyday events, the little small events that you're going to miss if you don't take time to do that. Now we're going to bring in Sabine, if she wants to, which has these two aspects of the footnotes to that section, if you're willing to try and look at that or not. I think I lost my highlight, but are you willing to
Sorry,
give us
David,
an
I must have
insight
opened the
into that?
wrong.
Because I can't. I don't know what
David,
that is.
I apologize because I think I was on the other section. I was on the Fore-having and the Vorwerfen
I
of it.
understand. That's my fault because I had to dive ahead to get the other piece of it that I
Okay,
wanted. And I
well, let
didn't want to
me,
make it homework
I
for
do
people
have,
because
I
they
mean, I
go, "Oh
do
my
have the
God, you're having us
German.
read like 20 pages of Heidegger?
Yeah,
What's wrong with you?" You know?
okay. So David, okay, you want me to look at the footnote?
Yeah, like haben wir bisschen nicht das
Oh,
Dasein auch
okay.
what does, do you have any sense of what that's saying?
Okay, just a minute here. Haben wir bisher nicht, ja. Okay. Let me try to translate that actually. Have we not until now um, put Dasein into specific positions and situations and and all the time did not pay attention to that it Dasein, um, that Dasein living, this is an interesting phrase, living into its days, living into its days,
Hmm.
in succession that it temporarily stretches itself.
That's what I was getting out of it, but not as
Okay, so it's,
precisely as you.
like, I mean, it's okay.
The
So
living
it's
into its days, living into the everydayness, and the stretching of temporality is
right. I mean,
key there.
that's how I would interpret it, but I interpret it as stretching in both directions, stretching into the past, into what we already know, but also, the laying out of possibilities.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that crisp understanding that I want to convey for Monday, and without getting belabored with language stuff.
So,
But
I mean, I think, and that is, we are, I mean, as we are as beings, right? That we are always going, the way I understand it, we're always going back and forth between those. I mean, on the one hand, we are thrown and we have our past, but actually Heidegger says in Being and Time that we are possibility. It's not only that we have possibility, we are our past and we are our possibility.
there you go. I that's You've expressed it very, very well. I'm trying to get to that clarity. Um, the next one, number two, the Geshen hen, what is that?
Okay, geschehen means
Geshen. Okay.
geschehen, and that means it's a happening, and geschehen is a happening. So this is actually something active. I mean, like, for example, in Being on Time in Other Places, he talks about das Geschehen des Daseins, where actually it's a happening. It's something that's occurring in an active kind of way. It isn't that we're just there like a pencil, but we are happening and we're reacting and we're constantly interacting as well. And we're
Yeah,
moving,
beautiful.
and I think that geschehen, is that geschehen is in the here and now, but it's fed by the past and the future.
That's it. That's the big concept to get across, and you've expressed it really, really well. I think it kind of picks up on the next section, if I could go to that, unless you want to do
No,
anything else with that.
that's, if you're good, I'm good.
Okay. So in section number 375, page 427, it says about the horizon of Dasein's temporal constitution,
Mhm.
right? It gets at the connectedness of life, a phrase I really picked up on. That is to say, the stretching along, the movement, and the persistence of which are specific for Dasein.
Mhm.
The movement of existence is not the motion, and I'm going to need help with that word, of something present at hand. So he's to differentiate, he does in Being in Time, the ready to hand and the present at hand. The present at hand isn't what he's after. It's more of the ready to hand, or the relation of those two. And then it goes on, the specific movement in which Dasein is stretched along and stretches itself along, we call it historicizing. And I do always connect up before with historicizing when
Mhm.
I have dealt with it the last 20 years. So it's um, multiple histories, possibilities of futures arriving, happening, present. Okay, that kind of enriches everything. But this notion of historicizing and how we rehistoricize. They don't use the
Mhm.
word rehistoricizing. I do. The question of Dasein's connectedness is the ontological problem of Dasein's historicizing. To lay bare the structure of historicizing. That's the problem for that I'm trying to work through because I think it relates to all the pillars behind me, including VuJaDé inside of souls, their souls. There's
Mhm.
um, so people want to chime in here. Sabine, you want to say anything? Anybody have an
Well,
observation?
I think the historicizing, what I would like, I mean, again, this is not a section I had looked at, but I can. Um, and and I think the historicizing is also, I mean, you have to understand, for those of you who have not looked at this, in the end, Heidegger is connecting all the threads, the physical world, past, present, future, other people. He connects all of these things. And the world is, in his view, it is really the interconnectedness between everything and the underlying relationships of everything that he likes to point out. And yet, though, when we go to the section of interpretation, the Auslegung, right, it's how our own histories determine how we see the past, our own past, and our own possibilities for the future.
Absolutely. You're right on. I love the music you're playing. It's right on.
You
I'll
know,
just I've got a
David.
couple more here, but go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, hey, David. I when we were doing last week, I just read ahead a little bit into the next page. So on page 193, it really helped me a lot to kind of get some sense around the sign.
Okay.
And, in that page on 193, it talks about meaning is the upon which of the projection in terms of which something becomes intelligible as something. It gets its structure from forehaving, foresight, and foreconception, the past. So that sets the context. So it talks about later that the sign can be meaningful, sinnvoll, or meaningless, sinnlos. So to me, that phrase right there kind of it's not a moment in time. It is the observation of that period between the past and the future. What you're projecting into the future of what might happen. But the context of it, and we all have a different context, is those three fours: the Vorhabe, the Vorgriff, and I'm sorry, the last one I'm just not getting. And
No,
Foresight,
that's yeah, I
Foresight,
agree.
Foresight.
There's um is a well-made point because it's not that we go through the seven B's, as I call them, and they're separate. And it's not that they're equally weighted in relationship. It's more, they're centered around Dasein, but several of them have a more focused role or a more important role than the rest of them.
The way I think of it is I've thought of it just in just doing the readings, and once again I could be wrong in his, but this is
Oh, you're
if you
fine. You're
take
doing
das
fine.
ein, that's a moment, and if you take the three before it, those are threads. They're not chronologically equal. One thread might be longer than another in influencing the context of the meaning that comes in to that moment of das ein. So, and it'll be different for everyone because of the polyphony.
Agree. Sabine, go ahead. Just chime in.
I would like to chime in here that, when he's talking about the Vorhabe, Vorsicht, and Vorgriff, that he is actually talking about a specific mode of, you know, Dasein that it is in. And he's talking about Umsicht, which is circumspection.
Hmm.
And the circumspection in this context, it is focused on the material world. So I mean, he is in this on, page 191, 92. He's talking about, a specific set of circumstances, I think, when we find ourselves in a situation where we encounter something, right? But in the physical world. And what we have in advance is already, we have it wired into us that we already assume that what we encounter has got to be good for something. And the process of Fore-having, foresight, and Vorgriff is really, I mean, I understood that as being within that context of interpreting physical things in the world. And he says at the end result is seeing something as something and then slapping a name on it. But this all happens in the larger context of, a Bewandtnisganzheit, a totality of involvements. That means, the functionality that has something in the world or in a specific context. I mean, if you get somebody, let's see, a being from Mars, into the world, I like to use that example, you know, the other being would not know these contexts that we have and what something is for. So I think we have to look at this more in a, understanding the material world here
Mhm.
in this particular section at least. And I think that translating this into a wider context, it might be possible. And if anybody can make that jump, David, it is you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Why would it just, apply to the material world? But I think here, this is what he is talking about. And David, if you want to make that jump to, okay, human human beings in regards to other human beings, I could see you easily do that. Not easily, but I could see you do that. But I think
Oh,
here
you're
he's
gonna
talking about
watch me
understanding the
move.
material world.
Okay, so here is Doug's page, and here I think is the most critical set of footnotes, and the phrase
Yes, okay.
struck me from the beginning when I was working
Yes.
with Ronnie on this is for having foresight, for conception, right? But then he introduced Vorhab, for stitch, if I remember right, it's the for structuring, what I call that, for griff, Vorhab. And since it's put in this special relationship, and then there's foresight
Hmm.
down there further down, we grasp in advance, we anticipate. We're going to get to that next week, but
So what I was alluding to is if you just scroll down to the very next page, which we didn't read last week, it's literally the next paragraphs that follow. Keep going just a little bit more. Yep, go down. It's in the meaning.
so this is page 193. Is that where you want? Yeah.
Yeah, I was on page 190. Oh, I was on page 190.
But that's
Yeah,
okay. We can go there.
193, where it says meaning.
Okay. There's got to
There
be
it
here
is, right
somewhere.
there. Yep. No, it was down just I think a little bit. Go down just a little bit more, a little bit more. There we go. Keep going right there.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm still
Right
on
there,
the wrong
that
page.
italicized,
There.
right there in the italicized, meaning is upon which of a projection in terms of which something becomes intelligible. Down where it's italicized. Yep, about
Yeah. Upon
sentences
which
down.
of a projection. Uh, and then he repeats for having foresight, for
Exactly.
conception. Um,
So
the
those three things create the meaning of at das Ein
yeah,
is what he was saying. So, if I translate that into English, it's meaning or it gives you context for understanding that what
context
you're
for
observing at that
yeah.
moment.
Yeah, so we're doing two things, trying to figure out what the heck Dasein is doing, and we're trying to figure out what are these other relationships that are happening. And I'm throwing history into the mix for today, you know.
Well, I think that's where
So
the historizing comes from, is this concept of getting a meaning of those three as
absolutely.
it moves, that's what actually creates it. And it can be, it says down a little bit lower, meaning is an existential design. It later says, hence only design can be meaningful, sinful, or meaningless, sinnlos.
Mhm. Well, I know you want to say something, Sabine. You got to unmic yourself. You got to
Yeah,
mute
and I mean,
your
I
mic.
get,
What I am, one of the things that, has that struck me is that, the being there, and the being there. How do we know? My summary of part of this is, how do we know that we're actually there? And I think it is through the openness to the world and the venues in which we interact through with the world are, twofold: understanding, and on a par with that, also the attunements, because it's our reacting and interacting with the world, making sense out of this.
Hmm.
But I think we do that, Heidegger, the being there. We know that we are there because of our understanding, but also through our attunements, our moods. We react emotionally. So we have both, the interpretation in a more analytic sense, but also the emotions.
How are you doing, Nicole? Is this,
I'm doing okay. This is a lot to take in, but I'm really enjoying this.
this is what how
Oh,
Ronnie
good.
was trained when I was worked with Ronnie, and the rest of the PhD students kept going to the bathroom a lot. So, to get out of the
I did
room.
just run to the washroom, but that's because like I said, like it's like the morning and I had a late day, but I really enjoy this. I took an existential philosophy class and it is the foundation of my own personal philosophy. And so I really appreciate doing this deep dive into Heidegger. I focused on other authors and Heidegger was much less in my repertoire, so I'm not able to contribute much today, but I absolutely love this conversation.
So you can do the same thing. Go to enthinkment.com. You can open this thing. I'd like to go into some other data sets I put with it a little bit later in the session.
Yeah, recently, David, Nicole had me read The Second Sex, and
Well, that's also good.
well,
I mean, not
interestingly,
also, that's better. Yeah.
the interpretation of or the translation of Simone de Beauvoir into English did not include all of her philosophical references and insights.
Yeah,
So she has a number of existential points to make that were deleted from the American translation and only brought back in more recently.
well, that's
And
good.
so
I
I
mean,
was
that could be
very
a study for another time. We can go there. So, is there anything else on this page? Because I want to get
no,
on
that
to
that was
some
it.
other
My big
things.
question I have, and I haven't read, the entire book. Obviously, I focused on what you and read
No,
around
that's fine. That's
with
all I
that.
needed you to do. Have your
Yeah,
toes wet.
but I was
That's
just
good.
wondering, is how Dasein and the concept of detachment comes in. Are you supposed to be detached? It's not part of it. You shouldn't be detached, or you can be all three states and you're still in Dasein. I
Okay,
had
so
read further
go
on that.
back to Sabine's thing on attunement. Now, I want to say this particular translation by McGuire et al. Doesn't use the word attunement, use the words mood, the mood, which has a very not the same connotation as attunement. So when you're reading and you see the word mood, just substitute in your mind attunement. So attuning
Mm.
in to an understanding, attuning into turbulence, attuning into anxiety, attuning into idle talk. There's all this attuning going on. Now, do we ever understand Dasein as human beings? I don't think so. I don't think we ever get there. But now we're going to turn to Sabine, who's going to tell us about it.
I'm sorry about this, but quick clarification. There are the terms state of mind
Hmm.
and
That's
mood.
coming up. I got that in a
Okay, in
clip.
that case, I'm
No, no, you can keep going with your thought. It's fine. I
no,
just want to know
okay, I just want to make clear
what's coming
that,
up.
the state of mind is the ontological term.
That's that's a
And
connection I
the
didn't
the
make. Thank you.
mood, the
Yeah,
attunement is the ontic term, is what we experience in, as we go through
that's
life.
good. That's good differentiation.
So,
Yeah.
okay, I'm
Yeah, this brings back a lot of history in my mind when you say things like that. All right, let me go select the right text. Okay, a lot of yellow in there today, brief. Okay.
See, if attunement is ontical, I mean, is it not like ontoepistemic? Or is it like there's this reality out there that is the impingement of the attunement?
I'm gonna let Sabine handle that one.
Yes, Ronnie, yes. I mean, I think it is I am reading all of this as, the state of mind as an existential, but as an existential as a potential. And then the lived part is, the actual enactment of what's actually happening in the world at a particular time. It's like the actualization.
That's why you're calling it ontical.
All right, let me get to a couple more, and I don't have too many of these, so yeah, appreciate you. Section 338, or 383 rather, to 384, page 437 has the transition there between the two sections. The being of Dasein has been defined as care. Care is grounded in temporality. I really like that notion. We first revealed temporality with regard to that way of existing authentically, which we characterize as anticipatory resoluteness. How far, let me fix that. How far does this imply an authentic historicizing of Dasein? So I made that a little bit bigger because it's for me something that I want to explore with you all. This is how we designate the historicizing of the community of a people. Destiny is not something that puts itself together out of individual fates. So I like that distinction. Not sure what to do with it yet, but I'm sure something will come up. Our fates have already been guided in advance in our being with one another in the same world and in our resoluteness for definite possibilities. Only in communicating and in struggling does the power of destiny become free. So I like that tension. Dasein's fateful destiny in and which with its generation. Then if we go down to the footnote 1 and 2, page 43, this statement may well puzzle the English-speaking reader. I highlight that just for Sabine, because she's always making this point quite rightfully. Who would perhaps be less troubled if he were to read that the irresolute man or woman can have no destiny? As we shall see in the next paragraph, Heidegger has chosen to differentiate sharply between the words Schickenstal and Geschick, whatever, which are ordinarily synonymous. So the point is there that Heidegger plays with the words, so even a German-speaking person in 2025 would look at this and go, I don't get why he's making a distinction when these words mean the same thing. But Heidegger makes a distinction between different spellings or different uses of the word and tries to make them mean more than they mean. Okay, so let's back up. The care thing will come up later because I tie that to another becoming with care. So that's another area, not for this week, but the revealed temporality with regard to existing authentically, and then the historicizing of the community and how that community does so authentically. So that puts it in the domain of Monday for dealing with groups, families, organizations, military as communities. Do you see my drift? And how they historicize versus how a person is historicizing versus how Dasein, the authentic historicizing of Dasein. Three different senses of this phenomenon. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if we can be that nuanced other than to say what I said. The individuals have their life isn't straight for anybody. It's crooked, and you go to war, you come back, you get divorced, you get bankrupt, you get a job, you get fired, you find a new relationship, you get married, get a cure for cancer. Now you're in rehab. You know what I mean? So my Vietnam days hasn't gone away from today. My being drafted Agent Orange hasn't gone away from today. My future is in rehab today as they're pulling my leg up as I'm repeating these things with weights on my legs and doing stretches and waking up every hour on the hour the night before last because I rode the horse 3 days in a row. You know what I mean? So I'd rather have the pain of the horse and the gratitude of the horse than just sit there and not do anything and not have pain. You know what I mean? Life. I'm trying to give you an example of how complex this phenomenon is, and we can't just say, "Oh, David has a history. He went to Vietnam." That's bullshit. It doesn't capture the complexity of it, the currents, how something from 1968 is still here in 2025, how 2025, thanks to Tom, and Olivia, you could communicate this to Tom, that I'm grateful for every one of those experiences because it taught me so much more. And that's coming up in another segment here. But does it resonate with you that this is possible to do an interpretation from this very important page, 383, 384? Yes, go ahead, Olivia, please.
I'm looking at the sentence that it says, only in communicating and in struggling does the power of destiny become free. So I'm trying to understand
Yeah,
what it
he
means.
doesn't say that your destiny is forewarned, is already written. He's saying people behave in a certain way and they're moving along. Like last week, you eat the first slice of bread and the second slice, and the loaf has more to it. But he's saying you can change it. You can change the historic. Hi, Paul. Nice hat.
So that's kind of what made me think earlier that the difference between fate maybe and destiny is that fate is what's going to happen, and to to us maybe individually, but as we interact, our destiny being I believe what he's saying is in a bigger context.
Yeah,
that can be different, maybe.
I think you're right on. My sense, I don't know what Sabine and everybody else thinks, but if I'm in a GrowthOD group or a consulting group or a class of students or a bunch of faculty, our fates are intertwined, and we're sort of in the same world, but we're sort of not. And I can be resolute about definite possibilities, or that community can be resolute about it, or irresolute, or not, and we're struggling. Does the power of destiny become free? Does the power of destiny? So he starts out with fates, then the power of destiny, free. But I think we can free it up a little bit, but we're still in Dasein that we don't understand exactly. So, Paul, we're on page 437 if you're following along in the book. We left the stuff you studied, the 190, 193. We're about to launch Anything else, Sabine? What do you notice?
Yes, I would like to make one quick point here that the word Schicksal, throughout German literature and thinking has actually been a really big concept. It's like, and Schicksal is something that you can't really control. Where, it's like you get hit with
Oh, here it
something,
is.
you
Got
get
it
hit
on
with
here.
some disease, something happened. Oh, that's just fate. But it is not something that, you can control. And as I said, in German culture, Schicksal is like it's a big thing. And in mindfulness, he kind of starts to diss that whole thing about, Schicksal, fate.
Yeah, that's a, it's a big it's a big deal. I'm not sure how to communicate it to an audience,
Well,
of
David,
military families, but
I pull that from, the Vorhaben, which is something we have in advance. So when we talk about our fates have already been guided, that is, an aspect of the Vorhaben, which Olivia was kind of alluding to. That is, we come to the table, whether we want to or not, guided by culture, by who we are. So in your example of growth or OD, we've all come with a background in OD. So we come with that as part of our, you could say, baggage of what there. If we did nothing, if we didn't interact, that would just continue on. But this point that Olivia brought up, only in communicating and struggling does the power of destiny become free. So it's now through those interactions that we change from the Schicksal to the Geschick, is at least an interpretation I have. And that was, coming built off of what Olivia said.
yeah. Welcome, Ken. We are taping, and I took your advice, and I am taping. And I think it's good that we archive this, and maybe somebody will want the course and deep dives into philosophical books. But
So David,
so I got another couple of frames, and I want to try to apply this stuff with you. So
yeah,
what else you want to do here?
I don't want to run this too light, but it would seem to me that Heidegger's saying that there's this mode of taking history as what leads to our outcomes, right? And then there's a way of historicizing that enables us to grasp a destiny and create that destiny with ourselves. But I think it's the one thing that's not highlighted, right? Any more than being dash with dash one dash another could be conceived as occurring through together of several subjects. There's this mode of being that is a collective, and as long as we are history of ourselves, right? We are in this fate of the collective. As long as it's me in the world, I am in the world, and the world is in me, and it's causing me to be. It's when we start to historicize collectively that we can generate a destiny together. And that togetherness is not me being with others, but my being with others such that we are collective.
Beautiful. Thank you for the insight.
That was really well said, Ronnie. I love that. Thank you.
Ronnie's good at this. Years of training. Hey, should we move on a little bit? Because I want to show you fun stuff coming up here. Okay. Okay, now we get to the primordial, which I understand to be from birth to death. Now, I know, Sabine, this is the death section of the book about death, but I'm reading it today. I got different insights than it just being about the dark side of death. I've got it that it's, I'll try to show you here. But if fate constitutes the primordial historicality of Dasein, then history has its essential importance neither in what is part in the today and its connection with what is past, but in the authentic historicizing of existence which arises from Dasein's future. I think it's Dasein's future here, not necessarily the human sense of future, but could be wrong. Possibility of Dasein, which we have already characterized, throws anticipatory existence back upon the factual thrownness. And so, for the first time, imparts to having been its peculiarly privileged position in the historical. And here we go. Authentic being towards death, that is to say, the finitude of temporality, is the hidden basis of Dasein's historicality. Dasein does not first become historical in repetition, but because of its historical is temporal, it can take itself over in its history by repeating. So I don't perceive this to be like a gloomy thing about death. It's more that what I'm pulling out of it is to get in the authentic being towards the finitude of the temporality. It's the basis of Dasein's historicality, but I'm tying it up to the earlier things about fate and destiny and one's ability in a community to have shared fate together, as they say. Um, anyway, so I just want to say that because I know Sabine, you're going like, I don't want to read this part.
No. I mean, actually, I did, a long time ago, I had looked at this. And I must say, actually, that I am now seeing that this is just my take on it, that in not avoiding that thought, about us being not there anymore, but I think that awareness actually helps us to live more fully and to live, it's like, okay, what do I really want? What do I want to be? Who do I want to be? How do I want to live my life? So I don't see this anymore as a negative.
Okay,
Actually,
I want to be sensitive to your
no, thank you. I mean,
yeah.
but I have come to the conclusion that I appreciate that, David, very much. But I've actually come to see this as something that is very positive in many ways because it
Yeah.
can, it can help. I mean, to think about that is to say, okay, how do I, who do I want to spend my time with? What's important? Where are my priorities? Am I in the right place? Am I spending my time? It's more of an awareness of the whole time and how one spends one's time. That's how I look at it now. It's like, am I really in the right workplace? Am I in, the right relationship? I mean, I think it brings, I mean, at least in my thinking, it brings me to a questioning of, okay, is this really what I want? And, when one is on one's deathbed, the question becomes, right, what are the things you wish you would have done that
Precisely.
you didn't?
Yeah, that's why it relates to the Oscar Wilde thing of Our Town, because it's exactly what happened. The ghost of somebody comes back and said, "Oh, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have paid attention to the flowers. I wish I would have said hi to my mom that day, you know." And now I can't. I'm a ghost. Let me move
Yeah, but you know
on.
what? I mean,
Okay.
in our society, right? We are pushing that aside. It's one of those, the verfallen in the falling into our society. It's not something, that we think about, want to go to, we push it aside. We
Okay.
push our own mortality aside.
All right. I'm going to turn
Thank
to the
you.
practicality now of all of this. And I got a couple of things I'd like to show you. I think it's best if I switch gears and just go to Notebook LM. Let me find Notebook LM. It was here a minute ago. Yeah, here it is. Okay. Now I can bring you in. Let's see, not that one, that one. Okay. All right. So we should all be in gear here. All right. You should see the Notebook LM. Now, what I did is uploaded the whole Heidegger book, Being in Time. I uploaded a bunch of other things. There's more I could do, and then I would check different boxes and do different things with it. Um, I want to just play a little bit of this because it's kind of the practicality before the Heidegger book or after the Heidegger. I took the Heidegger book out by not checking the box here on the left. And then I did this kind of a tape with some reflections of how I might turn this into something for Monday. So I hope that's enough explanation.
Something I think we've all felt at some point. That feeling of being stuck. You know, like you're caught in a loop that you just can't seem to break. Well, we're going to unpack a really powerful tool that helps you not just see those patterns, but actually rewrite them. So let's dive in and talk about how you can restore your life. I mean, really, take a second and think about it. Does it ever feel like no matter what you change on the outside, maybe it's a new job, a new relationship, even a new city, that underneath it all, the fundamental story is, well, exactly the same? That's the feeling we're digging into today.
And these are the classic symptoms, right? It's that same argument that just seems to follow you from partner to partner. Or at work, you have that meeting where the agenda is different, but somehow it's the same meeting every single time. And the big one, knowing exactly what you should do, but for some reason, you just don't do it. These aren't personal failures. They're actually clues that there's a much deeper story running the show.
And we can call this deeper story your before. Think of it like an invisible script or some background programming that's always running. It quietly dictates your reactions and shapes your reality without you even realizing it. It's that little voice in your head that whispers, "Oh, this is just how I am," or "See, this always happens to me." It's so powerful because, most of the time, we don't even know it's there.
So, if this invisible script is running our lives, how in the world do we edit it? Okay, this is where things get really interesting. We're going to look at the incredible life of David Boja. He's a Vietnam veteran and an academic who basically used his own life as a laboratory to prove that your past isn't just one fixed thing. And you have to understand, this framework wasn't born in some quiet, comfortable office. Oh no. It was forged under the most extreme pressure imaginable. We're talking about a kid with a juvenile record getting drafted into the Vietnam War, and then, decades later, getting hit with a devastating stage 4 cancer diagnosis directly linked to his service. The stakes for him? They could not have been higher. And this right here is the first huge insight he uncovered. The stuff that happened to you, the script you were handed, that is not your fault. Bojas didn't choose to be drafted. He certainly didn't choose to get cancer. But what he chose to do about it, that became his responsibility. And that's a massive shift, right? It moves you out of blame and puts you right into the driver's seat.
Now, this is the big, mind-blowing idea at the center of it all. We usually think of our past as this one single book, a straight line from then to now. But it's not. It's a whole library. Yeah, the story of that time you failed is on one shelf. But on another shelf is the story of that one time you came back against all odds. And over there is the story of an unexpected kindness or a moment of courage you forgot you had. You have an entire library of histories to pull from.
So how do we get the key to that library? How do we consciously pick a new, better story to lead our lives with? Well, that's where this really practical, totally jargon-free toolkit comes in. It's a 7-step process to become the editor of your own story, and it's called the Perview framework. So here's the roadmap. First, you characterize. You define who you are at your absolute best. Then, you externalize. You give that problem a name so it's not you. Next is sympathize, where you get really honest about why you hold on to that old pattern. What's the hidden payoff? Then you revise by facing the real cost of that pattern. Strategize is where you hunt for little wow moments, proof that you've beaten the pattern before. You use that proof to rehistoricize, to literally rewrite your history. And finally, you publicize it. You tell people your new story to make it real.
All right, so the theory sounds great, but let's see how this actually works on the ground. We're going to zoom in on a couple of the most powerful steps here to really show you how this process can turn a painful old story into a brand new reality. Okay, let's talk about step 2, externalize. This is an absolute game changer. Think about it.
When we say, I am anxious, we merge our identity with the problem. It becomes who we are. This step breaks that connection. You give the pattern a name, like a character in a story. When VuJaDé faced his cancer, he didn't say, I am sick. He named the illness the colonizer. See what that does? It creates distance. The problem isn't you anymore. It's this other thing you can observe, strategize against, and ultimately defeat. Okay, so you've named the enemy. Now you need to prove it doesn't have total power over you. That's step 5. Strategize. This is where you actively go looking for evidence that contradicts the old story. You hunt for what are called little wow moments, these small, maybe even forgotten times where you were the exception to your own rule. That one time you spoke up in a meeting. That one afternoon you didn't procrastinate. These moments are gold. They're proof you're not powerless. And all that gold leads you to step 6, rehistoricize. This is where you build a new history for yourself using only those golden little wow moments as your building blocks. You're not making things up. You're making a conscious choice about which true story to put in the spotlight. So the old story might be, I'm the kid who always messes up. But the new story, built on real evidence, is no, I'm the guy who graduated #1 in my class. It's a total reframe.
Let's just pause on that for a second. Your history isn't fixed, it's editable. This is the core belief that makes all of this possible. Your past isn't some stone monument that you're chained to forever. It's more like a living document, and you have the pen. You can edit it, you can highlight different parts, you can reframe the whole thing. Okay, so this is all incredibly powerful, but the big question is, what does it mean for you? Right here, right now. How do you actually get started? This isn't just a cool idea. Let's turn it into something you can do today.
Here it is, your first mission, should you choose to accept it. First, pick just one recurring pain point in your life. Second, give it a name, the imposter, the avoider, whatever fits. Third, find just one little wow moment when you beat it. Write it down. Fourth, and this one is so important, tell one person you trust, this is who I'm becoming. And then finally, schedule a 30-day check-in with them. That's it. That's how you start.
And this is why this whole thing matters so much. This isn't just about positive thinking. The story you choose to live inside of, the narrative you tell yourself day in and day out, that becomes the actual blueprint for the life you lead. It literally shapes your decisions, your opportunities, your relationships. It shapes everything. So the power is truly in your hands. You're the author. That old, tired, repetitive story, it's over the second you decide it's over. So the only question left is, what are you going to write now?
David.
Okay, so a couple of things I want to say. I've only applied the first pillar. The next thing I would do is add the book into the data set, ask it to apply all 5 pillars, and it would do that. But first I wanted to get the metaphors and language this far. So I apologize for not getting all the pillars in advance. Oscar needed an abstract. I got one out there for Doug and I.
So, David, I've been working with restoring. I just finished like 5 weeks of my org change class where we go over all the steps.
Oh, wonderful.
I've been doing deep dives into like lots of the ongoing literature to see how it relates and trying to bring together lots of the stuff we talk about to create sort of a philosophically deep and accurate step-by-step throughout this, integrating various points of narrative onto narrative story for a whole storytelling system. And so I've got some work I'm really proud of around this.
Thank you.
That said,
proud of you.
I love you, David.
Well, let me throw it open. So is this too simplistic? Is it too direct? I know I got to bring in all the pillars and the stuff, but what do you think?
Yeah, what I'd say is each of the steps, what you could do is have it just do one of these videos for each step and then edit it down.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, I always hyper emphasize sympathize. Because sympathize.
Sympathize, yeah.
In my experience, no one comes to a problematic characterizational narrative without having reasons for maintaining it. And people feel this deep sense of shame for having this thing that they don't like that they do, or that they are, or that they've been. And until you fully sympathize with living through that narrative regularly and truly understand it, you cannot get to the problematized stuff because you already have some problematization in your heart.
Yeah. There's a payoff that people have for keeping their habits the way they are.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things. So can you wrap your head around that we're dealing, what do you think of the library metaphor? The pulling one book out versus choosing which books to pull into your story? Was that too abstract or too simple or what? Oh, I see your hand, Ken. Did you want to say something, Ken?
After you.
No, that's all. I just wondered, like, I want to bring all the pillars in, particularly Doug, the VuJaDé, and focus, well, am I living my life outcome oriented when I could be process, or am I process when I could be outcome?
Yeah.
Am I introvert?
I think there's times that
extrovert?
you got to focus on one pillar and understand it, and you don't always bring all five in. I want to add to something
Go
Ronnie
ahead,
said
Ken.
that struck me. I think adding sympathy allows you to be a living human with the person that's suffering along with you. The modern therapy and coaching model says don't use sympathy, use empathy so that you don't get pulled into their story.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that you need both of those things, as Ronnie said. I think sympathy reminds you that you're a living person suffering along with them on their journey. Yeah, you got to have the empathy too, so that you know what to do about it connected to your thought process or whatever. You don't just get lost in the sympathy and stay in the mud with them. I think adding sympathy was a moment of zen for me. I want to thank Ronnie for that. I now believe you got to have sympathy and empathy in order to be part of the living story that's going on. And I think that's connected to your conversational story inquiry.
Well, what I proposed with Oscar and the group for the conference is a 3-hour session with Doug, myself, um, um, and it's going to be marketed just for military and their families. And then at this point, after showing something like this or just talking about it, I would actually maybe have Doug guide me through it or Grace Ann guide me through the steps, maybe do some breakouts around this idea of the library, one book versus a library, have them talk about it in storytelling circles, that sort of thing. Then go to phase 2 with the VuJaDé, and they would have a VuJaDé table outside or take it in advance, and they would have their scores. And they could then see how introvert, extrovert weaves into this. So it'd be, because you got 3 hours and you got to keep it interactive and do a lot of experiential stuff with an audience. You can't be
David, as I think about this, I really like using Perview there because of the reframing, and just for this coming week, that fits well with the Dasein with Heidegger. I know we're not talking about that, but it is that moment of how do you reframe it to have a new future. The way VuJaDé is I think the most powerful in helping, if we take this example of the militaries, if they're struggling with the reframing, because then you could say, okay, let's just pin that, and let's talk about your styles and talk about how does that relate to somebody else's styles, and that creates kind of a neutral territory for them to start seeing, oh, there is a different style even in the same plane. And they both have different stories. And so as soon as you can get that philosophically or in your head, then you can say, now let's bring that back into your now that you see that there's not a right or wrong story. This is a story. Now what other potential options are there? I think it just opens up as a catalyst for that. But I think the key to it is the purview piece and the somatic piece of reframing your story.
This truth disclosure, the Notebook LM is picking up the reframing from Olivia's work with Tom.
Excellent.
That's
perfect.
It's not a language that I use, but it's picked it up from previous forays I've done with the Notebook LM. And I just want to shout it out that glow and turning a big obstacle like cancer or being drafted or divorced into a gratitude, that's that's glow, full disclosure here, and appreciation. And I probably wouldn't do SEAM or AAM in this, but I think Perview and Glow and VuJaDé would fit pretty well. Now, for the second session I proposed with Oscar was to do a general audience thing with a lot of participation in demonstrating things like the restorying, have a little storytelling circle about their little wow moments, sort of bring them through several of those. And then into where, for example, I hope Vanessa will be there and take me through a quantum timeline session and a couple of other things. And Grace Ann and I know how to work with audience members, and if I get a volunteer, I can do my act with them in a sincere way, not just an act, but I mean, I know how to tune in to that audience. So that, I think they'd be two really powerful sessions. And then if we did another powerful session, we'd make a big impact in the LA community, I think. That's just me having vision, like Heidegger said. You have vision, destiny, break free, that sort of thing. I don't know. Well, we've used up our time and gone over time, so what I'll try to do is take this tape, and I'm going to turn it off now.